What will a watchdog report in the agencies handling the Clinton email probe tell us tomorrow? Let's bring in America's A-team. Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor. Bree Harf, Fox News contributor. Kayleigh McEnany, not yet a Fox News contributor. Welcome, guys. You get that? You got that, right? Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You comfortable on the right? You comfortable on the left?
Very comfortable.
Okay.
We're getting there.
We could swap the chairs if you need be.
We like the new studio.
What are we going to get across the board here tomorrow at 12 noon?
I think we're going to get the closest to the truth. I think both sides, Republicans and Democrats, are going to look at this and say, we were wronged by the FBI and their senior management. They deviated from protocol. The Inspector General did not write and, take 18 months and write a 400 to 500 page report because everything went well. Both sides will be highly critical, but it'll get us closer to the truth than we've ever been before.
Both sides are critical.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think both will be very upset.
And this is just focused on the Hillary Clinton email investigation, though, right? Yeah. So I think for some people who think maybe this will look at all the other controversies we've been talking about DOJ or the FBI, whether it's Russia or FISA, that's not coming out tomorrow. This is very specifically linked to the Hillary Clinton investigation, which is one of the reasons Donald Trump said he fired Jim Comey, for everyone who remembers his first explanation. So I have no idea what's in it. I will be very curious to read it, and I think that it will be interesting to see how everyone reacts.
It will be. Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, has been very clear. He believes that there were crimes committed in the course of this investigation by the FBI, by the DOJ. I'll be looking to see if there are any criminal referrals. This will be very, very interesting. We know that Jim Comey essentially became Attorney General in making that prosecutorial decision that should have been left to the DOJ. There's so many abnormalities, but was there criminality is what I'll be looking for.
It's a great question, because that's going to be the big question when we get through this report. What are the recommendations of the Inspector General?
Right.
What can you tell us about that? Will there be accountability for any of these actions that'll come out of this?
Well, I hope so. Remember, the Inspector General has already made a criminal referral on Mr. McCabe, and there may be more. I think James Comey's legal jeopardy becomes greater because you're going to start to see the precursors that may, as they look into their second, and Marie's right, the other investigations into FISA abuse, and then the releasing of the classified information. I mean, James Comey, it appears, evidently did exactly what Hillary Clinton was accused of doing. Took classified information and put it in a non-classified setting by giving it to people who did not have the proper security clearance. So that will be fascinating. The other thing you need to understand is the Inspector General will not criticize the decision to prosecute or not prosecute. Right. They won't look at, should they have given out the immunity agreements? Why was there a grand jury that was not impaneled? What the report will do is lay the foundation. This is what they went through, what they did and didn't do in order to make that decision.
Just to make a few things real clear here, this is Hillary Clinton, it's James Comey.
Right.
It's
and
the email
others.
matter. It's not the FISA deal.
No,
right.
It's the tarmac.
And it's not Russia.
Right, correct on that. So you mentioned Bob Goodlatte. He was with us last hour, and he is knee-deep in all of this. What he said he's looking for is to figure out which names and which characters sort of crossed both investigations. And he mentioned Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Here's Goodlatte last hour with us on what he's looking for here. And listen to the tail end of what he says in this statement. Watch.
I think it's going to shed light on how the Federal Bureau of Investigation mishandled this whole investigation with regard to former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. And then when you contrast that with the way they have handled the investigation of the so-called Trump-Russia collusion, no evidence for which I have yet seen, I think people are going to be astonished that there was this kind of bias in the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
That is just that is a loaded comment there. The bias and astonishment on behalf of the American public.
And it's a very aggressive accusation before we've seen what's in this report. So what I am hoping for is that people on both sides of the aisle can read it and focus on the facts, focus on what we know, not jump to any of these assertions that aren't proven. And it will be interesting to see how President Trump responds. I have a suspicion that he will try to use whatever comes out of this politically. He'll be tweeting about it. He'll get out there and claim the FBI is biased against him. That's a big accusation that a lot of people at the FBI take very seriously. I think we need to be very careful when we read this report and when we use those kinds of accusations. We'll see more tomorrow.
Okay. Why don't you get in front of the president already now?
Well, there are facts that undergird that accusation. You know, there are key players that were a part of all of these investigations, namely Peter Strzok, who signed the opening document for the Russia investigation, also interviewed Hillary for the email situation. He, we know, had texts with Lisa Page, wanted an insurance policy against this president. We have verifiable facts that he was opposed to President Trump from the beginning. We do know there was bias. It's factual. Know that we've seen the text messages.
Do we know that it impacted the investigations? You may think he had personal bias. We need to look for evidence that it impacted his work.
Well, tomorrow we'll find that out. And I think these are really real questions. You know, why was Hillary given a certain treatment and Donald Trump targeted from the very beginning?
The point in all of this, tomorrow's an important day.
That's right.
So we'll see it at 12 noon.
Important day indeed. Meanwhile, North Korea, we're all still talking about this morning. Senator Rand Paul was on with us earlier. He was sounding very hopeful about the idea of denuclearization. Listen.
I'm very hopeful, and if it comes to fruition, if we actually get denuclearization, President Trump will have done something miraculous, something historic. Now, we're still in the very beginning, so just the fact that North Korea signs an agreement doesn't always mean they'll adhere to that agreement, but I am very hopeful.
No, I think Senator Paul is exactly right. I think the world is a safer place this week than it was last week. And it's good that these two leaders are talking. By no means are they not a threat long term, but I think we're going into this eyes wide open. And I think the president was masterful in negotiating and bringing Kim Jong-un to the table and making progress. I think it's a real positive.
Newt Gingrich writes a piece. We can put the headline on the air here now. Trump has accomplished more than Clinton, Bush, and Obama combined, and this is just the beginning. It's the last line in a piece he wrote. It's 2.5 pages long, and this is just the beginning. What about that?
Yeah, well, I don't obviously agree with that assessment. On North Korea specifically, North Korea has not agreed to anything yet that they haven't said before. There are no new concessions or agreements that they have yet made. So I think it's too soon to say that we are safer or we're more secure.
Well, he did do something new. He sat down with the U.S. president.
Sure, but that didn't involve any new North Korean commitments. That was a meeting, and meetings don't equal policy. So I think what we will be looking for is the devil being in the details, which is always the case. If there are real substantive conversations that Mike Pompeo leads that actually include North Korean concessions, I think all Americans will support that. We don't have that yet. This is not yet a win for the president.
It's a big win for the president. You know, for 27 years, presidents have tried to deal with the North Korean nuclear threat. In 3 months, we know this meeting was announced on March 8th. 3 months, we've seen the release of 3 U.S. hostages, the destruction of a nuclear test site, now the vow to destroy a missile site, an agreement written, enshrined that they want to denuclearize. That's not just progress. That's not just commitments. We've seen actions because of President Trump. He's the great negotiator.
They've said that before, though. They've made all those commitments before, and none of those are actions. Those are just words.
The release of the hostages, the destruction of the nuclear test
They've done all this before. None of that's new.
This is much different.
Marie,
27 years.
Do you have a problem with him meeting with Chairman Kim?
I don't. I think that you don't.
You're cool with that.
You don't negotiate with your friends. You negotiate with your enemies. I'm cool with diplomacy. I think that diplomacy is the route to go here. I'm more concerned about the substance of those meetings. I'm also concerned with the language President Trump used to butter up Kim Jong-un. I think it gave the dictator some legitimacy at home, elevated his status
you know how
that
this
I don't
works.
like.
A little Marco. Rocket Man.
Right, but then he says really nice things about Kim Jong-un.
Marie, we all know this can change in one tweet.
That is true.
Here's the president talking about that rhetoric that he says is what brought Kim Jong-un to the table in the first place. Listen.
Without the rhetoric, we wouldn't have been here. I really believe that. You know, we did sanctions and all of the things that you would do, but I think without the rhetoric, you know, other administrations, I don't want to get specific on that, but they had a policy of silence. If they said something very bad, very threatening and horrible, just don't answer. That's not the answer. That's not what you have to do. So I think the rhetoric, I hated to do it. Sometimes I felt foolish doing it, but we had no choice.
I hear you laughing, Marie, because he's referencing back to the administration for which you worked.
That's right.
That didn't get Kim to the table.
Democratic and Republican administrations have failed with North Korea. So I like the idea of trying something new, and I like the idea of sitting down diplomatically. I am a little concerned that President Trump being so effusively praiseful of a dictator who killed an American this year, I think President Trump elevated, and Jason Chaffetz, if Barack Obama had said those things about Kim Jong-un, you and your colleagues would have been through the roof.
Look, I actually supported President Obama and what he did in Cuba. I was the one that was consistent on both of those things. And you know what? When Kim Jong-un is moving in the right direction, it's okay to pat him on the back and give him encouragement.
All of that language,
no,
though?
I'm saying when they're moving in the right direction and they're doing what is in the best interest of the United States, I can see why President Trump would heap some praise on him, pat him on the back, and keep him going in the right direction. And if he gets out of line, you got the military force, you got the economic force of the United States of America.
And Twitter.
And nobody understands Donald Trump, but he's always negotiating. Right. And he's winning for the United States.
And it's worth mentioning the parents of Otto Warmbier came out and said they support this president, the actions he's taken. He credited Otto's death with us getting to this point. He deserves a lot of praise for that. And Otto, we remember him.
Rob Portman's a senator from Ohio, and he was working for a year and a half to bring Otto home.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened in the end. He's going to be our guest next hour on that. Stand by, A-Team.
You guys are all fired up. Stay that way, because we're bringing it back. President Trump looming large in another primary election. How a tweet from the president may have sparked the stunner in South Carolina last night.
We are the party of President Donald J. Trump.